it's Brittany. I know it has been forever since I filmed a video, but I took a step back because I was trying to finish my degree, trying to get into medical school. As you can tell by the title of the video, I did get into medical school. This shirt was actually a gift from my brother. His company, Rising Company, they make just graphic tees, but when he found out that I got in, he made me a shirt with a stethoscope on it. So I'll link his company in the description box. But yeah, today we're gonna be talking about my path to medical school. I'm gonna start with my high school experience. I'm gonna keep that very general, and then I'm gonna move into my undergraduate experience. I was in Air Force ROTC, so my perspective is a little bit different in how I applied. And that's really the point of why I'm sharing today, because I know that there's a wealth of information about how to get into medical school and people's experiences, but I think that my perspective could help somebody out that might be in a similar situation. So my high school experience was probably similar to a lot of other pre-meds. I volunteered, I did some shadowing, I kept my grades up, and all of that is very important just to show that you're a good student. The shadowing piece in particular, it shows you have shown a record of interest in medical school. If you're not sure, don't feel pressured to do shadowing in high school. One tip that I would give to high school students is to call the schools that you're interested in and have a conversation with their STEM departments or their pre-health committees about what resources they could offer to you as a student who's interested in applying to medical school. And also you might want to ask them how their students are faring in the medical school application process. Again, don't feel pressured to do that. If you're 100% sure that you want to go to medical school, that's just something that you could try out. So for undergrad, I went to Alabama State University and I majored in biology pre-health, minored in chemistry. I was in Air Force ROTC, so I attended physical training and leadership lab, and if you're in Air Force ROTC, you know what that is. And that made my medical school application process just a little bit different. Starting out freshman year, one tip that I would give is to take as many courses as you can, because when you become a junior in our Air Force ROTC, you take on the role of a professional officer course cadet or a POC. So that means you have an increased responsibility, and if you know, junior year is probably when you should start looking at taking the MCAT. So you want to make sure that you have enough time to make the MCAT a priority. And then another tip that I try to emphasize is to develop professional relationships early on with the STEM department. And don't try to force anything. These relationships will come naturally, especially if you're a good student, you ask a lot of questions, you're interested in the topic that they're teaching. Those professional relationships will form naturally, and you'll kind of gravitate to the professors that you will end up asking for a recommendation letter. So that's gonna look like your research advisors if you work in the lab, that's gonna look like the physicians that you shadow, that's gonna look like the professors that you've taken classes from if your school does not have a pre-health committee. So my school didn't have a pre-health committee, so that's what I ended up doing. The professors that I had gravitated towards, naturally, I asked them for recommendation letters. One tip for recommendation letters, try to give your letter writers at least a month to write a letter. I really wouldn't say they need any more than that. And if you give them more than that, that might end up hurting your application timeline in the future. So really, like I said, where my medical school application process differed is right about junior year. That's when I started seeing the biggest difference. So like I said, I was in Air Force ROTC. I was a professional officer course cadet, and I was also the vice wing commander. And then I was trying to study for the MCAT, and then COVID also happened. So I had a lot going on. I think just the biggest tip, being in Air Force ROTC, you have to make your medical school application process a priority. Obviously, as a professional officer course cadet, you're there to mentor and lead other cadets, but you also have to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to get where you want to be in the next year or two. I did want to talk about the study materials that I used for the MCAT. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. So I used the Princeton Review books along with their online practice exams. Now for the Princeton Review books, I tried to read them, but I ended up not reading them because it's a lot of reading. So I just ended up using the online practice exams. And in hindsight, I probably wouldn't purchase the entire pack of books. I would just use the online resources or the online exams, and I'll mention the other ones that I used. So I used the Kaplan question of the day as well as their diagnostic tests. I used the Altius free full-length exams. I used AAMC's full-length exams number 2 and number 4. I used the UWorld question bank, and that by far is probably my most recommended resource. Their explanations are great. They tell you why each question is right, or why each answer choice is right, and then why each answer choice is wrong. And that was very helpful in reinforcing my learning. So again, UWorld Question Bank, most recommended study tool for the MCAT. And then I also used the Next Steps question of the day. This is not a study tool, but the MCAT subreddit was also very helpful in creating like a virtual forum of students who were going through the same thing and who were giving tips, study advice, their experience with previous exams that they had tested beforehand. So if you're trying to get in, if you're new to this process, you've never taken the MCAT before, I would highly recommend the MCAT subreddit as a way to just connect with people and figure out how other people are studying for the exam. That was very helpful to me. Being an Air Force ROTC, you kind of hear about HPSP, which stands for Health Professions Scholarship Program. I feel like it's more advertised to civilians. And a lot of civilians do apply and end up attending and going to medical schools of their choice. But in Air Force ROTC, you kind of really had to ask around about it. The board, you apply for the board in early August. So I remember I took my MCAT in June, and it was just perfect timing because literally the day that I got my scores back, my cadre had asked me for my scores to submit to the board. So that's a huge piece of the whole Air Force ROTC combined with applying to medical school. You want to take your MCAT early enough to where you can either take it again to get a better score if you need to, or plan to take it by the end of June so that when August rolls around, you have your scores ready to submit to the HPSP board. I'm gonna try to put up a calendar and highlight what months I'm talking about so you can have a visual representation. So want to take your MCAT by June of your junior year, and that's going into your senior year. And then your application will be submitted, or your interest will be submitted to the HPSP board by August. Now, as far as HPSP, it's kind of on you to get into the medical school, and that's the same for Air Force ROTC as it is with civilians. You have to be accepted to a medical school in order to receive the scholarship. So I applied to 2 civilian universities. Make sure you apply to more civilian universities than that if you're interested in HPSP. It's almost like putting all your eggs in one basket, just applying to 2 civilian universities. So yeah, just make sure you apply to a lot of universities for medical school. There's a lot of information about that already on the internet. I won't reiterate that here. A really good resource if you want to compare the 2, HPSP and Uniformed Services University, you type in what you need to know USU HS, and that will pull up a PDF document that really illuminates the difference between HPSP and USU. So now we're in August of your senior year, school has started. So again, the process is very similar for USU, HS, USIS, as it is with civilian universities. During your senior year, you're submitting secondary applications, you're going on interviews, you're waiting for that final decision. And one final tip that I would say is to really find someone who can guide you through this process that's not on the internet. The internet is a great resource. You can find a lot of information. I always recommend that people do their research and figure out what's right for their specific situation. But I think there's really something about having a mentor who you can talk to, that you're comfortable with, who you can just lay everything out and they will help you figure out the lay of the land. I think if I had made that a priority, my application would have been a lot smoother. It might have been a little less challenging. So yeah, other than that, like I said, everything happens for a reason. I'm very grateful to be at the university that I'm at now. And I'm just looking forward to continuing my education and posting more videos. A lot has changed with my hair. I know I originally started this channel to focus on my hair, but now that I'm in medical school, that might change a little bit. So if you guys have any video requests, I really want to show you guys how I meal prep. I have some more hair videos, a lot of changes, a lot of big things happened with my hair within the past couple of months. So you guys will see that in the future. But yeah, I'm just excited to be back and posting. I cannot promise that I will be consistent. Medical school is a lot. Still getting used to it, still finding my sea legs. But I just wanted to get this video out there to maybe help someone who is in my situation and who wanted a little more information about what it's like to apply to medical school while being in Air Force ROTC. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.